Hi, welcome to A Bag of Treasures, Nurturing Well-Being Through Resourcing to Promote Connection. My name is Bonnie Levine. Thanks for being here. Let's start off with an opening practice to ground ourselves, or otherwise known as a grounding practice. So you could be standing or sitting or laying down for this practice. You can be alone or with others. All one needs to do to practice grounding is to notice the physical contact your body has with some things or one thing. So that could be your hands in your lap, your feet on the floor. You could also sense your back up against the back of the chair or your bottom on the seat. If you're standing, maybe you can sense your legs or your feet in your shoes. So to practice grounding, you're just going to be noticing this physical contact your body has with something. You can place your attention there. Perhaps you can notice, for example, any heat or texture of your hands on your thighs. Maybe you could even sense your feet in your shoes or in your socks and how that feels. By bringing your attention to something physical like this, it brings your mind and your body and your heart into the present moment. You're being with a sensation. You're not doing much of anything, but you're being as a human being. Great. Okay. Let's move on. I'd like to start the presentation with a description or a way in which the C learning curriculum describes resilience, and C stands for social, emotional, and ethical learning. This curriculum describes resilience as the ability to respond in a productive way to challenges, stress, threats, and unexpected surprises, which might otherwise destabilize a person. So as humans, this happens to all of us: stress, unexpected surprises, maybe threats of not feeling like you're good enough. So these kinds of things can destabilize us, and we can connect with resourcing or grounding or using these tools or techniques to help build us up and connect with ourselves, expand our resilience so that it can improve our well-being. Okay. So in the C learning curriculum, they use a resiliency-informed model. And this shifting attitudes slide has been adopted by Elaine Miller-Karras from the Trauma Resource Institute. And there'll be more information about that institute at the end of the slideshow. So shifting attitudes. In the beginning, many years ago, there's more traditional attitude of what is wrong with me? People are bad, people need to be punished. And in our more modern day culture here in the United States, there's been a popular lens called trauma-informed. People are teaching from a trauma-informed lens of that people are suffering, what happened to you. And many people care but lack understanding and skills around this area. The C learning curriculum takes it a step further and uses this resiliency-informed lens, that people are inherently resilient, that people can learn skills to enhance their resilience and improve their well-being. Science has actually proven that these skills can be learned. And the resiliency-informed lens also says, what is right with you? What are your strengths? And so we're going to use resourcing to support our well-being and help build or grow our resiliency. So another slide from the Trauma Resource Institute. So this is the resilient zone, and that zone is in between the gray lines, and the red line is basically how we can be throughout our day. Some of us live in a more resilient way than others. And some of us, actually many of us, throughout our day, maybe we're feeling a little more resilient, than other times during our day. There's sort of highs and lows, and it's just the progression of how we are as humans throughout the day. And sometimes we're in a very high way in the resilience zone, and sometimes very low. But when we're in this resilience zone, or also known as the zone of well-being, we can feel calm, alert, and have a steady sense of ourselves. We also can get bumped out of the resilient zone. So these two blue lines indicate the resilient zone, and this red chaotic line can really show how something activates us. We can get bumped out of the resilient zone. We can get stuck on high or in high. We can become edgy, irritable, maybe manic. There's anxiety and panic and pain and angry outbursts. So stuck in that high zone. And sometimes we're stuck in that high zone for quite some time, minutes, hours, days, depending on our life situation. We also can get stuck in the low zone. We can feel depressed or sad or feel isolated. There's exhaustion or fatigue or numbness that comes with it. And sometimes we bounce back like into the resilient zone. We get stuck in high, we get stuck in low. And it can really affect our sense of well-being. So going back to the shifting attitude slides, I want to connect resourcing to the zone of well-being and how they can work together. So we know from science that these skills, these resourcing skills or grounding skills, can really help us stay more regulated. So in a sense, any person can learn these self-regulation skills, right? And so learning these skills can help reduce suffering and support our well-being. And really, we can gain a sense of what is right with me, what is right with you, what are our strengths, how can we use our strengths to support our well-being. So in connecting resourcing, or from the title, Building a Bag of Treasures, I'd like to invite you to think about some resources in your life. And before we do that, if you'd like to gather some materials, maybe small pieces of paper, a pen or pencil or colored pencils, and then some kind of container like a small lunch bag or an envelope, so you can actually start making some of your resources. So in this section, we're going to identify and create personal resources that bring you a sense of ease. We're going to do a practice around the resources. And we're also going to develop some skill in identifying and tracking sensations in the body that help build body literacy. So, what are personal resources? Personal resources are internal or external or even imagined things that bring sensations of greater well-being to the body. And for me personally, nature brings me a greater sense of well-being, whether it's being in the woods, camping, kayaking. Resources can also be an activity that you love to do. I happen to be a potter and make things out of clay, and that brings me great satisfaction. Or even a special person in my life and thinking about that person can bring a greater sense of well-being to my body. So this chart was created with in an elementary middle school classroom, and they were actually creating a resourcing toolkit or bag of treasures. And you can see from this chart, the kids came up with a lot of different things that could really renew their sense of well-being, right? Visualizing a person or place, maybe touching a plant or a pet or an animal, even holding on to a stuffed animal. Maybe to resource themselves, children want to talk it out or sing it or even yell. The children also thought of activities of walking or yoga, meditation, eating or drinking to restore their well-being. Some of the kids got really interested in actually crafting really connects me to myself and others. Sewing, coloring, drawing, hair braiding. Some children love to write or write poetry. And other children talked about resetting or reframing something with humor. And that was a resource that they used and didn't actually think of it as a resource, but they used that. So depending on how you're feeling at the moment or an outcome that you're maybe interested in, you can choose one of these resources to practice with. So taking the resource list and thinking about how do I translate that into a resource card or a treasure. Um, you don't need to be an expert at drawing. You could use stick figures or even just really simple visuals like this image down in the corner of some blue lines representing water. Um, maybe you love to ride your bike, maybe art making. This card over in the corner here is a bed with a little stuffed animal in it. So just some more examples of resources that children and grown-ups have come up with for themselves. So the invitation now is to identify your own personal resources. So what's something or two or three things that if you had cards in front of you, and maybe you do, you would make a little drawing of, or choose a particular color of colored pencil and make some squiggly lines that represent something. So you can see that this child, she was actually taking, the 9-year-old person, she was taking acting classes and was really into the theater. This Ida B is a book that she loved to read. She's got a small sort of stone here that she loves. Um, she has a pet guinea pig that brings her a sense of safety and humor and well-being. So the resources could be anything very personal to you. So you're making drawings of the resources and you're putting them into your treasure bag. So the next step after that is really an invitation to practice with your resource. So there's many different ways that you can do that. And I actually have a resource right here, which maybe you can see. It's a tree with some birds that are chirping. And outside my window every morning, I wake up to, actually not every morning, birds chirping, and it brings me a lot of joy, although sometimes it wakes me up, which is fine. So you can choose to hold the resource in your hand. Sometimes people like to hold the resource on their heart. You can hold the resource in your lap. So you can decide how you want to hold your resource right now. Okay, we're going to get started. So you're holding your resource. And if you don't have a physical resource right now, you can maybe think of a resource and just hold that in mind. But if you have the physical resource, this is kind of how the script goes. So you're holding the resource. If you feel comfortable closing your eyes, you can do so. If not, just leave them open. If you're practicing in a group and children or grown-ups want to leave their eyes open, it's totally fine. Just ask them to look down a little bit so they're not just looking around at everyone else. And they're quieting their eyes a bit. So you're holding the resource in your hand or hands. You're bringing the resource into mind. So you're visualizing this resource, bringing the resource into your body, into your heart. Maybe you can have a picture of this resource or a little movie of this resource in your mind. And then the next step is, can you feel any sensations related to this resource? So for me, knowing that I'm holding birds chirping, I can almost feel or hear in the morning what the birds sound like. And also I can feel a little bit of irritation because they woke me up this morning. But in general, it brings me a lot of joy and gratitude for being able to hear the birds. So can you identify any sensations in the body related to this resource? Maybe if you're thinking of a person or visualizing a person, maybe you can smile at them, or maybe they make you smile, or they give you a warm hug, or there's an activity that you love to do with them. So see if you can notice any sensations. And then see if you can actually identify where the sensation is located. Like for me, it's in my ears because I can hear the birds. Not quite sure what the sensation is at this moment. That's okay. Yeah. Can you describe the sensation? Does the sensation like move around? Does it lessen or intensify? Can you notice overall, since we've been practicing with this resource, has your body changed or a mood change? So you're just noticing when you're holding this resource in mind or in your heart, in your body. Okay, great, everyone. You can put your resource down, you can look up or open your eyes. Okay, so resourcing as a practice, because it is a practice, in order to feel the results, one needs to practice it and practice it a lot, a few times a week, even a few times a day. If you're feeling a little agitated, you can try and bring a resource to mind and see how it can decrease your stress and support your overall well-being, help you feel more connected to yourself and others. So resource practice can help you bump yourself back into the zone of well-being so you can make steadier decisions or feel steadier in your body. Resource can't make the hard stuff go away, but it can bring some relief to your suffering and give one a bit of distance maybe from it, even if it's just for a moment. Practicing resourcing a few times a week can help build that muscle memory and grow an overall sense of well-being. So if you're someone who's interested in practicing resourcing yourself and or teaching it to children or grown-ups, I've put together a list of tips that may or may not be helpful for you. So if you're going to teach resourcing, please practice it for yourself so you have an experiential understanding of it and you're really teaching from your own experience. So you have a sense of possibly what other people who are practicing the resourcing may feel. And I encourage you also to practice with different resources to see how they feel in your body. And also knowing that sometimes practicing with a resource can bring a mixture of emotions. Like when I was practicing with my chirping birds, like they bring me a lot of joy. And there's also could feel slight irritation when they woke me up in the morning. And please note also that people have different levels of comfort in their bodies. So being invitational and gentle with your language. So never requiring anyone to close their eyes. Some people may not feel sensations in their body, and that's okay. And some people may feel really intense sensations in their body. And so really supporting that with language to dial it up or dial it down. If folks are not comfortable with drawing, you can also always offer maybe like appropriate magazines where people can search for images and people can cut out those images and use those images in their resource bag, or maybe even photographs that people have at home. Or a friend could make a drawing for you. If you're someone who has access to the natural world, you could collect a rock or a stick or something and place it in your bag. You also could, depending on the age of your group and the size of your group, you could scaffold the language and practice for them. So the practice looks similar across ages, but you're going to say maybe different things if you have a group of 5-year-olds or 10-year-olds or 15-year-olds or older adults. So you need to really know who your audience is. Practicing resourcing at the beginning or the end of your day can really support your well-being. And if you're teaching a small group or a class of kids or adults, it can be really sweet at the end to have people share what their resource was and describe how the practice felt in their body or how it made them feel. And that reflection at the end of a practice can be really beautiful to help people connect with other folks in the room, and really can help form a community of connection. Okay. All right. So I'd like to close a bag of treasures the same way we opened it up, with a grounding practice. And so take a moment if you want to adjust your seat in your chair or if you're standing. Again, a grounding practice is noticing the physical contact your body has with something. So again, it can be hands on thighs, feet on floor, feet in shoes, bottom in chair. The beautiful thing about grounding practice or even a resourcing practice is no one needs to know you're practicing. You can practice it anywhere. You can practice it by yourself. You can practice it within a group. And both of these practices actually help you to come into the present moment, can decrease stress and increase a sense of resilience and well-being. Great, everybody. Okay. So as we come to an end here, I just want to acknowledge the C curriculum, the Social, Emotional, and Ethical Learning Curriculum. It's an innovative K-12 education program developed by Emory University. You can just Google C Learning and you can learn more about them. And also Elaine Miller-Karras, who's the co-founder and director of Innovation of the Trauma Resource Institute, also an author. And a bunch of the slides that I used come directly from her. And then there's also a little bit about me, how I've been an educator for more than 20 years. I'm an artist, yoga and meditation practitioner, and I've taught hundreds of educators and children caregivers sensory-based mindful awareness practices and have impacted thousands because of that. I'd like to thank you all for learning about A Bag of Treasures, Nurturing Well-Being Through Resourcing to Promote Connection. Again, my name is Bonnie Levine, and you can contact me through mindfulclassroom.org or mindfulclassroom@gmail.com. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope something in this presentation resonated for you. Thanks so much. Bye.